Power Zone with Katlego, Legodi, 12 to 3 a.m.
So you find us in the second hour of the Power Zone. A big thank you to everybody that rallied behind the open line in the first hour of the show. It overlapped, right? It went into the second hour. You guys had a lot to talk about, but I'm glad that we're able to connect as we start the day together in this fashion. I want us to go into the second hour with Xolani Baloyi. Xolani is a freelance journalist coming through from Health E News. This morning we're looking at the plight of the people of Kliptown, residents of Kliptown in Soweto, saying here that they've been forced to live under inhumane conditions and in an unhealthy environment. We hear that for more than 20 years, they've been using plastic, chemical, non-flushing toilets. There claims that some community members have even fallen ill as a result. So Xolani is here. He's worked on this story and is coming through to really give us a sense of some of the issues that are experienced by the people of Kliptown. But I must say to you that this issue of the plastic, chemical, non-flushing toilets is not isolated to Kliptown alone. I've seen some parts of this, province, Gauteng, where you find that there are those areas where we don't have infrastructure, and most of them would find themselves having these. Some of them would look green, others would look a bit yellow, black, but they are plastic, chemical, non-flushing toilets that are makeshift. They're there just to help here. So we hear the residents of Kliptown saying that how now they've been normalized, and it's something that is coming now to affect the health of the community. So you find us live on 0861987000, and there by X we go by at Power FM 987 at Katlego, Legodi _ and yeah, Xolani is here with us. You're welcome to rally behind the hashtag Power Zone. Xolani, good morning. Thank you very much for your patience.
Good morning, Katlego. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate the work that you've been doing here, especially when you look at some of the issues, the day-to-day challenges that people are experiencing here. Sometimes we just downplay some of them, or at times we just, feel like they're far off or actually far away from us when you look at the day-to-day struggles. And this morning, you're taking us into the heart of Kliptown, and this is where we find these makeshift toilets. Just give us a sense of what is happening here, Xolani.
I mean, when you talk about Kliptown, one tends to think about its historic context, thinking about 1955 and the adoption of the Freedom Charter, and as you know, that the Bill of Rights says that everyone has the right to human dignity.
Yeah.
But for the residents who live in Kliptown and Soweto, this is actually not the case. As you've mentioned in your introduction, people in Kliptown have been living in a very sad condition. And when I say sad, it's because I've had an opportunity to live amongst them, to really understand what they're really, really going through, and also try and understand the dynamics, right? So it is also true that there are allegations that people fall ill, because of these toilets, and I think that's where the heart of the conversation really is. And then really really focused on the chemicals, that are found within the chemical toilets. And when you look at the chemicals from the non-flush toilets, they really rely on a combination of these chemicals. It used to break down the waste, and when you look at these chemicals that are listed, that form part of the combination, one of them in particular is actually banned, which is it's called formaldehyde, banned in Sweden, in Japan, in Europe, Canada, and Australia.
Yeah.
And in South Africa, it's not banned. Right, you begin to then ask yourself, why is this chemical not banned? Out of curiosity, because I really wanted to understand what are, some of the health hazards if one is exposed to these chemicals. Then I had a conversation with Professor Martin Unani, who is the head of chemistry department at the University of the Western Cape, where he actually says he warns of the potential hazards that are associated with the plastic chemical non-flush toilets. And he continues to say that the direct and indirect exposure to the chemical toilet, that is the main problem. Now, you need to also understand that people in Kliptown, not only Kliptown, right, everyone who is using the chemical non-flush toilets, the prolonged exposure to these chemicals, they create a problem, and particularly for females. I've had the pleasure of speaking to various community members in Kliptown, and I came across a young lady. And look, the thing is, when you introduce yourself and you say, look, I'm a journalist, people are scared to share. People are scared to actually be judged, because, to be honest with you, this actually strips them of their dignity. Where she has to say, this young lady, she's now in her early 20s. She said to me, look, I was born and raised in Kliptown, and when she was about 9 years old, when she actually got an infection. And she said that her private part started itching, and it was actually, swollen up. She went to the clinic, and she was instructed, she was given the medication and instructed how to use this medication. And at the clinic, they told her that it is because of the chemicals that had burned her private parts. And now, when you look at these chemicals, as I was having a conversation with the professor, and he said that, when the chemicals are absorbed into your bloodstream, that's where the problem actually happens, because these chemicals exacerbate conditions like your vaginal irritation, the bacterial vaginosis, which you have scratchy, you have itches.
How do we find ourselves here, Xolani, if I can come in? Because when one thinks of Kliptown, you think of, like you started by giving us somewhat of a historic context to Kliptown, and one would have expected that there would be infrastructure, even back in the years, that was built here. How do we then see people, for 20 years living in this condition? Is this another extension of Kliptown? Or even, as we transitioned into democracy, there was a crisis that was not attended to. How do we find ourselves here? And one wonders as well as to what happened then to the local government in terms of them just prioritizing then infrastructure where Kliptown is concerned. We've since been seen developments coming through. We've seen the rollout of RDPs. There were projects that were started as we saw democracy just playing itself out. Then how do we then find the people of Kliptown being the forgotten?
Yeah. So I'm glad that you actually mentioned that point. There was development, and I remember, I think it was in 2001. The Johannesburg Development Agency was actually appointed, to implement and be the partner for the Greater Kliptown regeneration development. Right? They were able to build Walter Sisulu Square. They were able to build a rank around in Kliptown. They were also able to build this low-cost housing, which is actually under JPC. Right? But the problem, what actually happened is, when you look at the level of corruption that actually is taking place within the local government, it's actually sad. And when you also look at the politics, I think, I really need to mention this, because at the end of the day, the poor of the poorest are going to suffer here, and they're continuing to suffer when parties actually play politics. In 2023, there was a motion of confidence that was tabled by Action SA to eradicate these toilets, to eradicate chemical toilets, to eradicate pit toilets. And the motion was actually rejected by ANC, it was rejected by EFF, PA, just to name a few, right? And when you look at the reasons why they actually rejected, it's actually appalling. You had the ANC saying that this is semantics. It has nothing to do with the plight of the people. This is documented. You have Action SA. You've got Patriotic Alliance saying that because part of the proposal by Action SA was to actually build or install these outside toilets. So the PA said no, these toilets are actually legacy of apartheid. And they're not going to allow that these toilets be built. And PA continues to say that when PA is in charge, they're going to build houses and toilets that are inside the house. But the truth of the matter here, Katlego, is you have people who are using buckets to relieve themselves. And when politics are really now, becoming a stumbling block, it is sad, because I know people in Kliptown that I can take you to them. They will tell you I'm using a bucket. Because of they are running away from infection.
Yeah. It's just a lot. I want us to listen to some of the community members that you spoke to, Xolani, that will give us a sense. I was so heartbroken by Ntate Mogolo, but I want us, because you gave us context to the story, Sa Ausi, the young lady. I'm not sure if she's the one that, was infected here, or she's one of the people that are staying there, but because you gave us the plight of young women and what they're faced with, let's start with the voice note of the young lady. We'll come back, and also just go back to Ntate Mogolo as well, in terms of some of the issues that they're faced with on a daily there in Kliptown.
Send us your voice notes on 083-303-7093.
I used the toilet since a very young age, and I got infected when I was 9 years old. My private part just started itching and it got swollen. I went to the clinic and they said they can't help me, but they just gave me a prescription and told me how to use the medication that I have to buy. They told me by the clinic some chemical did burn my private part, and I never used the toilet anymore. I just got used by using a bucket for my own safety.
So these are really just shocking revelations as well, because you can imagine that someone would go on their life. If she was infected at age 9, you get to understand that this impacts her. Actually, going into even the older years, she still finds herself with this becoming, or still being, her reality. I mean, when you look at even these warnings coming through from experts about the serious health risks here. You've spoken to Professor Martin Onani, and you get a sense that these issues would, be desperate for the residents of Kliptown, especially when you see that there are these, issues of health that are playing themselves out. I'm sure the story of this young lady is not isolated here. There are others, even though they won't be proud to come through and say that these are our daily experiences, but they would find themselves, faced with this reality on a daily. Isn't this supposed to say to the councillor that there is a crisis here? Isn't this supposed to say to the local government here that there's a crisis here? If you get even experts warning here that there is a crisis, where lie then these interventions from local government? Our councillors, they one would believe, stay in these communities. They use these facilities as well.
Yeah. Look, when we talk about councillors, to be honest with you, they failed Kliptown. All of them, Katlego. Every single one of them. I've seen them come in, come out. I've seen councillors from the DA, ANC, PA, the current, ward councillor in Kliptown in ward 18, ward 17 rather, is a PA member, and their leader actually rejected the motion to build toilets. So to be honest with you, the councillors have actually failed. And I remember, I think if you remember, in 2019, the South African Human Rights Commission went to Kliptown to go and inspect. They did their own inspection, right? and they actually received their own findings that, you know what is happening in Kliptown there, it's sheer neglect. Sheer utter neglect.
Yeah, because one wonders as well to say where if these are issues that are trampling on the human dignity of the residents there and their human rights, where do we position organizations like your Human Rights Commission? Are they worried about some of these issues that are playing themselves out? Can they then use their powers as well to raise awareness? Because it does then also points to the issue of the lack of planning as well, where infrastructure is concerned.
Yeah. I'm happy that the Human Rights Commission went to Kliptown to actually have a look at what's actually happening there. And
what were their recommendations?
And some of the things that what they actually recommended was that they requested the city of Johannesburg to provide direct response to the integrated development plan for the area of Kliptown, along with the reports detailing the city's current progress and future plans for the IDP's implementation, including timelines, right? And because what they've said, what the commission also found out, that there are communal bucket toilets that are posing a health risk, right? And then I sent an email asking the city of Johannesburg that, look, I know that there was a communication between the city and the commission with regards to the Kliptown issue. Guess what? The city of Joburg blue-ticked me.
Wow.
Right? So this is a big issue. And my concern and worry here is the Human Rights Commission, why didn't they go to the courts to compel the city of Johannesburg to give them what they requested, right? In order for the commission to start the second phase of their investigation, because the first phase was the inspection. The second phase was going to be, all right, this is what we have received from the city of Johannesburg. This is how we need to proceed. But none of that actually took place. This happened in 2019. Right, Katlego?
Yeah.
No word from the city of Johannesburg. But we also need to understand that I remember there was a case where the Human Rights Commission was involved, and it also made a recommendation in a certain community. The matter actually went to court, and it was said that the commission's recommendations are not binding legally. So when you have a Chapter 9 institution, such as the Commission, right, which is representing the poor of the poorest, because when you look at the Commission, it serves as a platform for remedy for the poor outside the court. But if the commission itself, the recommendation are not legally binding.
If it's limited, it doesn't.
It's limited.
It's working in circles. Then it doesn't actually come through with tangible interventions that people would so desperately need. I want us to listen, Xolani, to Ntate Moholo. We'll come back and wrap up our conversation here because his was very heartbreaking over the fact that he would have been there, during the first elections, and he would have been there even when South Africa was, in the trenches in terms of the apartheid era. And one, wonders as to, does over the years, as we see the 20 years playing themselves out, do we see his hope of a better South Africa dwindling? Does he then, more or less even, get triggered daily by all of these things that are playing themselves out, because he never imagined that he would then live in this kind of a South Africa that we find ourselves in. Let's listen into Ntate Moholo. We'll come back, reflect, and wrap up.
Julia Khatlego ngihlala eKliptown sengumdala and angisakhona umnyaka wami uhambile mina 83 ngiphethe manje asinama-toilet angisakhona ukuya e-toilet funa ngithathe ibhali ngifake ibhakethi la endlini kodwa kudala ngila eKliptown nezindlu zakhona ziyanetha abasinaki sihlezi nje manje ayisiyakhala wakithi ne-government ayifuna ukusisiza kodwa makuthiwa votani bangena indlu nendlu mara manje abasinaki abanandaba sihlala nje emanzini angikhoni ukuhamba njengamadolo angikhoni next ukuhamba inyawo zami zibuhlungu kufunde ngicela abantu bangibambe ngekula amathoyilethi ale kude kangaka angisakhoni kuyakhona isisima singicale sangiphatha ubusuku sengithatha ibhakethi ngihlala ebhakethini
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Xolani Ntatemoholo, yeah, he's 83. You can tell that he even takes it there, right? He takes it there to say when they want our votes, they're here. You know, they walk around in search of our votes. But now it's like we are forgotten. The infrastructure is crumbling. We don't have houses. He's struggling to walk. It's just, it's disastrous. And I guess Story Center Temoholo is not an isolated one, Xolani.
True. It's not. There's a lot of them. It's just that I couldn't just talk to every single one of them because it gets overwhelming when you begin to listen. And you could hear from the voice, you could see the facial expression, you could even see that the eyes becoming teary, that this is heavy upon them because they thought that when 1994 came, this is what they thought. They put all their hopes. And one thing about Kliptown that you need to understand that even during apartheid, because of it was outside the Joburg municipal, right? It means that even during apartheid, they didn't get the basic services. They've been living like this all this time. All this time they've been living like this. And all what politicians would say is that, hey, we do admit to the fact that Kliptown is a forgotten place. They like saying that.
It can't be forgotten because during the elections, then they're there. There's a voting station there. So they can't be the forgotten because they're not forgotten during the elections, which is what Ntate is saying here, that when they want our votes, you would see them in their numbers here, traversing the lengths and breadths of Kliptown. Even these facilities, they would go past them. It's just a sad one. But I want us to wrap it up with just looking into, where lies the solutions here? Where lie the light? Where, can we say that lies the hope here? I know very well that you've been pushing to raise awareness. You're not the only one that has been pushing to raise awareness. There have been many reports around what has been happening there in terms of even the illnesses here. Where lies that silver lining, according to Xolani? What needs to be done as a matter of urgency?
I think first and foremost, there has to be a serious accountability here. There has to be serious accountability because when you look at the city of Johannesburg and the Department of Settlement and Infrastructure Development, both of them, they're pointing at each other, saying that it is your mandate, you are tasked to fix this. And you have political leaders here who are also going head on. You have the Chapter 9 institution, which is the South African Human Rights Commission, which has limited powers, right? So first and foremost, because of all of this mess here, there's no accountability. There really isn't accountability. And chances are, Katlego, that this situation will continue and be worse. Because of there is no accountability, and once you have the city, once you have the Department of Government pointing fingers, and the so-called leaders also, not agreeing on this matter and playing politics, and you've got this Chapter 9 institution that has no power. When as an ordinary South African, as an ordinary resident of a Kliptown, you have no power. You literally have no power. So what needs to take place is there has to be accountability. There has to be accountability, and it means that the someone has to fix the city of Johannesburg and the departments. They are corrupt to the core. Because if you look at the corruption within the local government, it's extremely high.
That is why then people find themselves here.
Yes, and they get away with murder. Literally, they get away with murder. So the department, the city of Johannesburg has to be cleaned. The department has to be strengthened, because these two need to serve the people and not to play politics. Another issue that I've seen is that you have employees within the city of Johannesburg, employees within the department who are politicians, who are members of these political parties.
It's a problem, yeah.
So that's where the problem is. So service delivery must never be politicized.
Yeah.
It's a basic human right.
Yeah.
And the Chapter 9 institution, which is the commission, must be given powers. Because currently, it has no power.
Xolani, you've really said a mouthful, but I have to let you go. We're out of time. Really appreciate the work that you're doing. Continue, bringing us all of these gems that, people may think that they're, how we roll. We become the voice to the voiceless, literally. And this is what we've seen through your work here. Extremely appreciative of you coming on and just taking us into the work that you do. I know it really becomes extremely emotional, even for us as genos, because we are human beings as well. But I really appreciate you going into the heart of some of these issues and being brave enough to talk about them. Let's continue doing the good work. Hopefully there would be that turning point for our citizens. How do we follow your work? How do we follow what you do? Who are you on social media?
All right. On Facebook, I'm Xolani Baloyi. That goes with my Twitter. It's the same thing, Xolani Baloyi. And I also do some political commentary on my TikTok, which is again Xolani Baloyi.
Awesome, Xolani. Please do come back. I would love to have you back so we can talk about some of these issues. But I really appreciate you giving us your time this morning.